summertime, Mr. Rigby, we call it Mr. Rigby, we still have this book, came out with Rigby's Reliable Candy Teacher. Wow, this was like, my grandfather had this book, Mr. Vakey had this book, everybody in central Illinois had this book. And Mr. Vakey was kind of the Pied Piper of confectioners for the mid part of Illinois. This book has recipes, how to make big batch of candy. Now, every Christmas when I was working, we'd have ladies usually come in and say, oh, well, you know, I make divinity every Christmas, you know. And my sister would get a little snarky and say, well, you know, we start out with 30 pounds of sugar or whatever it is, because I didn't make candy, so I don't know. People would ask me, well, how do I do this? It's like, I don't know. I was the chocolatier person. I can tell you anything about chocolate, but I cannot tell you how to make candy. But anyway, what I love about this book, because I actually, before we opened, I took it home and read it. It would tell you how to set up your candy room. It would tell you how to decorate your windows for displays to draw people in. It would talk about flow. It would talk about marketing. It was great. It's an amazing book. I mean, and I used to teach sales training to, you know, corporate executives, so I was like really impressed that Mr. Rigby came up with this. So it was the Bible of yes, there I am. It talks about chocolate dipping in the summertime, which unless you have an air conditioner, really sucks, I'm telling you. Yeah, so if your chocolate gets too hot, it turns white. It's called a bloom. It doesn't mean it tastes bad, but my mother, who is not Greek, actually taught me how to dip candy. And she learned from a German woman who taught her. So you can come in. Yeah. I mean, it's a talk. It's about candy. Are you okay with that? Yeah, come on in. You can sit. I'm talking. You may sit and be quiet. So anyway, there I am dipping. And so we dip everything by hand, except lately for the turtles, they bought 2 machines to replace me, I'm happy to say. But this is how they did it back in the day, and yeah, this is how we did it. Is that you? Your hand? That's Roger. Roger would make the caramel apples. Okay. So my brother, God love him, as my sister mentioned in the tape, was the male, so he actually had the recipes that my grandfather had. So here's how the recipes came. They didn't tell you a lot, but my sister still used my grandfather's original copper kettles, which is very cool, and the original marble tables in the back. So if you go there, mention that you know me, and she'll give you the tour. So, this is how the recipes came, and he laminated them, actually, which were such a mess. But it doesn't really tell you much, and so you have to kind of mess around with it. But these are a big batch, like 30 pounds. This is not on your stovetop. Yeah, this is a big batch, okay. So before World War II, so what happened after World War II? Everybody came home, GI Bill. My father worked for a while, but they didn't want to work, as my sister said. It's really hard work. I can't describe to you what it's like to run a business, a food business, and make your own candy. We worked 7 days a week. I worked for decades, and we were haggard, I will just say that. But these are all Greek-owned candy stores in central Illinois. So I talked to people from Paris all the way over to Litchfield. So I interviewed or researched basically through Decatur, Springfield, Jacksonville. I did not come up to Bloomington, but I do have a little bit of Bloomington. I did a little bit down here, but I didn't include that in the book per se. This was true across the country. Okay, all these little towns had Greek candy stores everywhere, Ohio. So I found out there's this guy in Minnesota. He's a retired engineer, like not a trained engineer, but whatever kind he is. But anyway, he's been researching the Greeks in Minnesota who were confectioners. So I said, yay, him. And I do encourage everybody who cares, if you're of Greek extraction. And there have been so many people in touch with me. Oh, my family, blah, blah. So do it, write it down, get the story. It's so very exciting. So anyway, there are all the stores that were. They all have such great stories. They kind of all knew each other, which was part of the relationship that they all had. There are Greek Orthodox churches: Springfield, Decatur, Danville, Champaign, Peoria. What's that town called? Beneld? Yeah, Russian Orthodox church. Yeah, one in Terre Haute. That was it. So that was important, though, because that's where the Greeks could get with their own, if you will. But my grandfather, so you have to also think about, these were folks who went to little towns all by themselves, didn't speak English, set up their business. Mr. Vakey would drive around and talk to you and tell you how to make candy. And that's how they kept in touch. Okay. It's okay. Okay. So this was in Champaign-Urbana around 1913. Mr. Viner, we call him Old Man Viner, my part of the world, and Mr. Vakey. But you see how big these buildings are. They're huge, They're cold in the winter. Yeah, because the wind just, okay. And there's the soda fountains, which were such places of pride. They were things of beauty. And that's my grandfather's original soda fountain, not the one that we have now. So that's my great Uncle Nick, that I didn't know, and then a worker. But they had dressed up, right? They wore ties. This is the Palafos family in Urbana, where now there's a shoe store. And the candy store here in Bloomington was right across the street from here, where the Mexican restaurant is. I know, very cool. Okay. And this is Mr. Karen from Springfield, and all of his kids worked there. You can see them, so very important that we all worked. This is Mr. Samaris's father, George, in Hoofston. Mr. Samaris was the one who came to me first with his folder and his archives of the ship manifest pictures, and he was in tears. He said, "Thank you so much for telling my father's story." So then I had to do it, right? So, but there we are. Okay, now, this is Bloomington. So here in Bloomington was the Philos Candy Kitchen. Christian Philos and his brother Harry. And the reason I brought this, why did we have this? Did we have the Greece thing? The Grease? That's not it. Okay. This is, if you're interested, in your family history, two things. Go become members of Ancestry.com. Worth the money if you are interested. Do you watch? Yes, it's amazing. Well, the challenge, and it is a challenge, that sometimes, like with the census data for my grandfather, they had Gelson in one of the census data instead of Flesor. His Greek name was Flesurus, which got changed along the way. But you have to double check, or the dates will be wrong. The birth and death dates, you have to double check. Spellings, and that's, you can't take all of this as kind of gospel. But one of the resources is a city directory. So like in Springfield, I had such a good time. I went to the library and went through a scabillion city directories, and there were, 40 Greek candy makers. So like the Karasotis theaters here in the United States, across the United States, they started out as candy makers in Springfield, which is very interesting. And then they, were pretty entrepreneurial at the time, right? Movies are coming into play, whatever, and Mr. Karasotis said, "I want in on that action." Center. That says center. Roger. That says center. Oh, I see. Yes. Washington. Right. Yeah, right across the street. So that was smart, right? Right across the street from the courthouse. Well, CD, there, I guess he was called CD. He died early, and his wife left eventually, and she remarried. And they went out of business. Hang on. Right, 1919. They started out in Ohio, and and came to Bloomington in 1904. And then. Which isn't right, of course, because you're in the directory for 1902. And so right. Whoever gave you that information. And they were in the directory in 1930, but not in 1940. Okay. Right. So, so he had come from a village where he said it was very poor, and then they brought two cousins over every year, and they'd work for 2 years for room and board, and he would give them $600 and tell them to go out and prosper. So that was kind of that same model that was happening in Chicago. It probably was, yeah. Okay, so we have some pictures. Oh, here we go. So this here. So check this out. Birthplace, Greece, Grease. I know, right? I know, but this is the thing. These are the census people. These are real people, right? Who write down the information, and that becomes the record. And so you just think, well, how stupid can they be? But here's something interesting, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this as we move forward. Are we okay for time? Because it's just us, right? We're good, okay. On the World War I, the draft registrations for some of the Greeks in our area, they would put down for race, they would put black. Or for my great uncle Nick, they would put Oriental. So that was interesting too, because that was an observation, that was a judgment that went into the public record. So you pull this stuff up, it's like, okay, interesting. But anyway, Greece, because they obviously did not know how to spell. Yeah. So here's a picture of the Princess Confectionery here in Bloomington. Very cool. And again, you know, here's everybody working, and I love these pictures. These are from the National Hellenic Museum, if you care, and it's right on Halsted, if you are ever up there. Yeah. And just a display of his confections, which is very cool. And there they are, behind their lovely, beautiful soda fountain. The cool thing about the American Soda Fountain Company in Chicago, still there, big warehouse full of parts. My sister and I took the train and we went up there to get, because we had our marble bar outside. We didn't have the guts. $25,000. I'm not kidding. But anyway, the people who run it now are the Shy family, and their grandfather sold my grandfather his first soda fountain. So I think it's very cool. I know. All right, this is marble. These are marble bars, by the way. It does. They all look alike. Yeah. Okay. What else do we have? Another shot. I love how they're all dressed up. Yeah. And men are out front. The women are either not working or they're in the back making whatever. But the men are usually the out front people until kind of time evolved. One of the things, too, that they did was participate in the First World War, whether or not they fought. My great-uncle Nick fought. My grandfather was too old. But they were very, very patriotic to their new country, even though they'd been here maybe 10, 15 years, you know. And so this candy store donated all of their profits one day to the Red Cross. So yay them. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, all was not smooth and easy and rosy for the Greek immigrants coming to this part of the world, even in Chicago. And I want to talk a little bit about the real overt resistance to immigration. Now, everybody's heard about the Ku Klux Klan, right? Ku Klux, okay. The Ku Klux Klan, as you remember, started first after the Civil War, and they were very anti-black, primarily. The Ku Klux Klan re-energized itself in the early 1920s, and it was a very interesting phenomenon. It was not just in the country, rural areas, it was also in cities. There's a whole book on the Ku Klux Klan in Chicago. It's fascinating if you're interested. But this Ku Klux Klan, so you have to remember what's going on. It's right after World War I, right? So we had issues with Germans. We have the influx of immigrants coming to this country, right? So it's not just the original immigrants like the Germans and the Scottish and the Irish. Now we've got those Southeastern Europeans coming. They're a little swarthier. They're a little different. They don't speak English all the time. They don't necessarily go to the Catholic Church, this clan didn't like Catholics either, but they were just very different. And if they were together in a town, that would cause some problems. Or maybe just if they were individuals in a town. So this clan was kind of rurally based, and it was very, very active in Indiana, for instance, started. There's a historian at the Indiana University that's made his career on Klan history. So the Ku Klux Klan, and this is my story, which I wrote about. I don't know how old I was, high school, 8th grade, something. What did I say? Anyway, I had to work, because if you didn't have school activity, you went to work. So I'm behind the soda fountain with my grandfather's down here, and my dad's here, and I'm kind of hanging out. And this old man, to me, came in to get a Coke. Cokes were 5 or 10 cents. Small Coke was 5 cents. Big, large Coke was 10. So he came in and he orders a drink, so I make the drink. And my grandfather from the other end of the soda fountain said, "Hey," some Greek name. And this man just smiles, beams, "Hey, Gus, how you doing?" And I kept thinking, well, and I didn't know much Greek. I mean, as we all grew up, we learned the store Greek, so we learned names for the money denominations. We learned names for shoplifters, different things. So I asked my dad, I said, what's grandfather calling Mr. Smith, whatever his name was? So my dad drags me down to the end of the building. And he said, that means horse's ass in Greek. So I said, well, why is he calling him a horse's ass? And he said, because he was in the Klan. And I said, okay. So the Klan burned a cross in my grandfather's front yard. They burned a cross across from the store in the center of the street. They burn crosses. There's a story in Bloomington, Indiana, where they burned, this is your story. Why don't you tell that story?
They burned the cross in front of the Greek Candy store, and then they drove around the square along the corner, asking these people. This was in 1923, so their grandfather had already been.
He'd been in business.
Almost 20 years at this point.
So all of a sudden, right? But the Klan in our part of the world was anti-Greek. They were, anti-immigrant. And they had rallies in our park north of town, 3 blocks down from the store, 5,000 people. They would have, at the University of Illinois, the presidents of their fraternities were Klan members. Yeah. I mean, this was pervasive for a couple of years. And it was very interesting. Some of the towns, they would boycott the Greek candy store, soda fountain, until they went out of business.
There was a store in Iowa, Salt City, that was opened by 2 Greek immigrants
And my grandfather was one who stayed. And the local newspaper wrote a very supportive editorial about my grandfather and his two brothers, how they, had fought in the war. My grandfather joined the Masons, the kind of social civic organization that, and my grandfather actually bought the building for the Masons in Tuscola. Because he went there, he joined the Masons, and he became very high up, and he learned English that way.
What are the dates on those articles? I think
1924, July
July what?
July 31st, 1924.
And the other one is the 20th.
August 23rd, 1923.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Newspapers.com.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that, though. Great source. We were so lucky to get these copies of these because they threw them out.
No, there's Chronicling America, which is Library of Congress.
Yeah.
There's a couple other newspapers
Yeah.
next to.
Yeah, I got great stories on the Klan from the Decatur paper, the Mattoon paper, Champaign-Urbana paper, from our paper. But as I say, we used to have 2 newspapers in our town, but they closed. One had a fire, but this one, my brother's wife's family owned, which was convenient when we were at the time. But they sold it, and so the guy who bought it threw out tons of papers. And they were told that up at the University of Illinois, they had archived the small town newspapers. The Tuscola papers were not archived well at all. You can barely read them, and it's not always true, but I found the Decatur, Mattoon, Champaign papers had a lot of local, and I imagine the Bloomington Normal paper would too, had better stories about the small towns. So anyway, very interesting phenomenon, and my grandfather stuck it out. And, basically, my dad told me that he said to some man, if you come into my store again, I will kill you. So that would scare me because my grandfather was stocky. So anyway, the other interesting piece about the Klan were the women's membership. Women at the time, right? They got the right to vote, 1920. They also were very active in the temperance movement. So these are women in small towns who all of a sudden had a lot of power and agency to become more public figures. And so they joined the Klan because the Klan was promoted as a family endeavor. Join the Klan, huh? Yeah, right, I said that. Family focused, all American, and at the same time in this country, they were trying to get rid of the hyphenated immigrant, no more Greek Americans. It was just Americans. We're going to become Americans, and there was a lot of backlash with immigration. So 1924, there was a immigration law passed that put quotas on particularly the Southeast European immigrants. So the numbers of Greek Americans, Russians, Italians, Serbians, dwindled dramatically. So there was that window from the late 1800s up through 1924 where they could come pretty easily. But then after that, it was over. So it really, really dwindled, which was very interesting. So my grandfather hung in there. On a national level, the Greeks formed in 1922, and I gotta pull out my notes, the American Hellenic Educational Progressive Association, primarily based in the Greek Orthodox churches called HEPA. And this was a national organization that kind of, I want to say, overtly and covertly was protesting their right to be in America and become citizens and participate in America. And even in Chicago, the Greek Star newspaper was very, very promotive of becoming American. They wanted the Greeks to come to America, learn English, get educated, become citizens, be successful business people, and assimilate into the fabric of American society. They really pushed that. And I will say, for most of the Greeks, even in central Illinois, they did that within one generation. My grandfather was very successful. You know, the nickel and dime Cokes, every day he added up. He bought a farm during the Depression, which is a story that his brother found out about it, and he was going to buy it, and my grandfather bought it out from under him. So my great uncle Nick got mad and went across the street, opened up his own store, and never spoke to my grandfather for 30 years. True story. I'm not kidding you. The Greeks, they're crazy people. So anyway, so all was not, you know, but you have to give them credit. I mean, my grandfather had a 4th grade education. He learned English joining the Masons. He learned everything he could about business and making candy from Mr. Vakey and networking. You know, his kids all worked. He went to work 7 days a week. He saved his money, bought a farm, which probably got him through the Depression and World War II with rationing and, you know, all kinds of things. He never went back to Greece, which was unfortunate. But, you know, he raised 5 children and sent everybody to college. That was very important to him. And consequently, other than my dad, nobody really wanted to come back and be in business because it was hard work. So what happened to, where are we with our slides? Here, we're back. This works out, I know. So again, after World War II, so what was happening, right? Interstate highways. I remember when they built the interstates. Do you remember that? I don't know how old you are, but it was a big deal. Big box stores, you know, came into play. Fast food. So all these little downtowns, you know, and I dare say probably Bloomington Normal. I remember a lot of empty buildings here when I was coming up in the 70s. Champaign-Urbana, you know, our little town just dried up, you know, floated away. Yeah, and that, you know, everybody went out to the highway. I was talking with somebody downstairs about the malls, shopping malls, how they were a big deal. Now they're closed, you know, so I've lived long enough to see this. But it was just so interesting that the iconic candy store, soda fountain, downtown small towns, you know, got lost. And so there are maybe, I wrote down where they're located. There's one in Columbus, Ohio, Goshen, Indiana, Knife River, Minnesota. These are Greek twin women whose grandfather had a confectionery. It's way up there, north of Duluth. It's cold. Columbus, Indiana, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Crown Candies in St. Louis, which is still open. I had to look it up because St. Louis as a city is kind of going by the wayside. So all of these things impacted, and our store was impacted as well. You know, there was nothing downtown for us, and you know, we had become very old-fashioned and just, you know, not kind of a destination place. So when we decided to reopen, we thought the timing would be right after 9/11. People were looking for kind of a family atmosphere. I don't know. My sister and I will love you if you come in. I mean, I don't know if she's been nice to you. She usually is. But, you know. Yeah, it's an experience, you know. And I, you know, would sit there at the soda fountain, and one summer, I didn't work out in front much because I'm not that polite to people. Because I don't know why. Why is that? Anyway, I like to work in the back. But this little boy came in one summer, and he discovered root beer floats, which the whole thing was almost as tall as he was. And he just loved them. You know, it was just like this happy place for him. And so I made them. And after a while, I just gave him one because he was so enamored of them. But, you know, if you come to our store, it is very much like it was when I was growing up, and also other people older. And it's really a cool place. You know, we stir your Coca-Cola, you know, so, and you can flavor it whatever you want. And it's kind of fun. And I guess my sister and I, you know, we look at these pictures now, we think, what were we thinking? And we spent a fortune renovating this building to bring it back. I mean, seriously, a fortune. And a year and a half it took us to renovate it. I mean, we worked hard. But anyway, we must have missed it. And I got this story over and over and over again from the second generation Greeks who would talk about growing up in the store. Now, a lot of us, you know, went out to college, and as my mother said, you know, I didn't raise you to come back here and work so hard. Well, and to the day she died, she thought we had lost our minds reopening the store. But we must have missed it, you know, because we were there as a family unit every day. You know, we understood what it took to make a living. We understood what hard work was all about. And I think that was really very hard growing up, but on the other hand, we understood what it was like to work together as a family. And yes, our staff often, as my sister said, you know, we're yellers, the Greeks are yellers, and our staff would come back and they say, we can hear you, you know. And my story about my grandfather and my dad with the knives, I guess got out of school early one day, and every day during the work week, before there were computers and things, all the businessmen primarily would come to the store around 2:30, get a Coke, you know. It was also the place where you would learn the news. You know, you'd learn local news, what was going on. You would, you know, you just would pick up, and I learned a lot just listening. But my grandfather, the store is empty. I walked in, I thought, well, where is everybody? And my grandfather and my dad are behind the soda fountain with these knives. You saw the knife, yelling in Greek and waving these knives. I thought, well, someone's going to die here. And I don't know what they were arguing about, but it stopped, you know, and then by osmosis, then people started coming back in. And I guess everybody was used to that. But there was another Greek family, the Loomises in Greenup, Illinois, and they were famous for their fights as well. In fact, they wrote it down. Somebody wrote it down somewhere, but anyway. So the Greeks, and Roger, my good husband is not Greek, but he has learned to live with it. It's all good. Oh yeah, it's true. It's a true story. Okay, so anyway, my sister's still in business. She bought me out. We literally, while we were working, dipping candy, we came up with a figure. That was funny, and again, my staff came back, we can hear you. So a couple years ago, yeah, I retired, and it was hard work, and I didn't realize how tired I was physically. So I am older. But anyway, my sister's still there, and she's still making great candy, and she's very busy. And questions, they kind of ask questions as we've gone along, but thank you for your participation.
If anyone has any questions, I have a microphone.
Well, they can just shout out. It's a cozy group here. Anybody have questions from out there in the world, in the hinterland?
I guess I kind of have a quick question. So you talked about it being really male dominated. When did you see that kind of shift, if there is more of a shift?
There was no shift.
Okay.
I will say, though, women, you know, even the Greek women, like I'd say Champaign-Urbana as an example, worked in their restaurants, particularly at the candy stores, with their husbands or their in-laws. This one lovely Greek lady in Champaign told me she came from another city and she married a Greek guy in Champaign, and she said, you know, I thought maybe I could just stay at home and raise my kids. Oh no, you know, I had to go to work. So there was a lot of behind the scenes action. My grandmother, Sophia, did not work, but she had, you know, 8 kids at home, babies. But I will say with my generation, my sister and I, that's the shift. You know, it is very rare for the women to make the candy or own the business. The women in Minnesota, same thing. We talked a lot about that. So there was no shift, partly because there are not many candy places left. The Dove chocolate, so there's another lady in Chicago who's a chocolatier, you know, that there is some of that, but there's no big, unless they become women chefs, let's say in a restaurant, but there was no shift. Yeah, no. I was expected to work behind the soda fountain, clean, whatever, but I never was expected to participate in the business. My mother was behind the scenes dipping candy, and she was not even Greek, so, and did not enjoy it that much, but she was good. Yes?
How did reopening the shop impact the downtown?
Oh, very well, yeah. I can't say it's full and blooming and bursting, but little shops, you know, and a couple more restaurants, and has become a destination place. We have been on TV a lot. All of the public television channels around the state, just about except for Chicago, have done stories on us over the years. The one interview with my mother was Steve Hartman on CBS Evening News, which that was an amazing adventure. That came about, this lady came in our store, and she was really quiet, and she sat in the back, and you know, so finally I went up, talked to her, I said, you know, how you doing, what are you doing here, whatever. She was from another state. She said, I do freelance writing for the Parade Sunday Supplement, back when we had newspapers, and she said, you know, would you mind if I did a story on your store? I said, no, great. So she came back and did a story and put my niece and nephew, my sister's younger kids, they were little, so cute, on the front cover. It was Easter time. It went to 9 million homes across the country. Now you think, oh, well, it was our little 15 minutes of fame, right? As Andy Warhol said. So the producer of CBS Evening News got this at home. And Katie Couric was the newscaster lady at the time. So I guess she took it to Katie Couric and Steve Hartman and said, you know, we ought to do a story on this. So Katie Couric's producer called the store, and my sister answers the phone, and she says, it's Katie Couric, producer. And you know, what? So anyway, so at the time, Steve Hartman's Friday thing was Assignment America. So what they would do the week before was position 3 stories that people could vote on ahead of time for the next week. So we were one of them. And so what happened was, and I still tear up at this, the entire area, Champaign-Urbana, News-Gazette, Channel 3, everybody got on board and bombarded them with, yes, you should pick this story. And he said that we were the highest number of votes ever. And they stopped doing it, I think, not long after that. But anyway, he's still on Fridays. But anyway, he calls, I think it was a Sunday night, or I don't know, I answered the phone. And he said, oh, this is Steve Hartman. I'm like, oh. And we'll be there tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. It's like, holy shit. So we were kind of anticipating it. And you know, you think, well, I'm going to be on national TV. I better be really, really clean, right, and beautiful. And we had cleaned, but we stayed up all night. So then they came in the morning, Steve Hartman and a camera guy, that was it. And they filmed for a day and a half. They filmed us, they filmed customers, my mother, which she was not very, I was really afraid that, and I told him, I said, she is not happy that we've reopened. And anyway, so I thought, okay, great. We'll watch it here in the store, just us, staff, whatever. Oh no, Channel 3, Champaign, filmed us watching ourselves. And it was like, oh my God. Anyway, it was a great piece. I think it's online somewhere. He was an amazing editor of his own stuff. It was amazing. It was a really wonderful piece. So all of that, this is a long story to your short question, has brought people to Tuscola, not just us, but we did, I think, provide a catalyst for bringing folks and businesses to the downtown. It certainly helped us stay in business. We had people, coming across the country. Oh, I saw you on channel or on Steve Hartman. I had to stop. It's like, really?
There were two things. We had a
Yeah.
fellow from Eastern Illinois University who was really
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
was working at the Chicago Sun-Times
No, it was a Trib.
trip. And
He wrote a
he
piece.
did an article because he knew
He
we
came.
had in class anyway.
Yeah, so he came. I forgot.
And it was on the front page of the Chicago
Yeah.
Tribune.
Oh, so no, I mean, this is all like, doo-doo-doo-doo. Yeah.
From Los Angeles, because of
Oh, yeah.
run by the same people, and they published
They published it on the front page. Yeah. So we were nationally famous. I mean, it was a very short window, but it did help. It helped us in our own hometown, because sometimes in your own hometown, right, they don't really take you that seriously. And I will say, when we reopened as the sisters, there were so many people in town thought we would fail. Because a lot of small businesses fail within the first year or two. They just go out of business, can't make it. I mean, and I heard these rumors, and we were hell-bent to stay. And so 20 years later, so that helped. We had to get financing for the store. We wrote grants to the state of Illinois for anything we could. We put a ton of our own money in. We had to do sweat equity. So, and the fact that we were there every day, all day, I think made a huge difference. And so it did help. Different businesses came. The challenge in these small towns, and even, you look around, these are huge buildings. They're huge. They are energy wasters. Nobody wants to be in them. It's a lot to take care of. And it takes a lot of money to be in these buildings. It's like an old house. Oh, they're so lovely. I own an old house. We know they're money pits. But our store is a money pit. I mean, seriously, it's just constant repairs. Being in the food business, we lived through COVID, but try to staff it, even now in a small town. Nobody wants to stay in a small town and work. And, we had high school, we always hire high school kids, always. And a lot of them have gone to college, they've stayed with us. I have one who's been with us since she was little, 10, Sarah. She runs our store now, but she's had 3 kids, she's great. But it's hard work, and a lot of high school kids would not come to work at our store because they heard it was so hard to work there. Even though we love you, but our motto is, we work as hard or harder than you will. And it's hard to be in the food business. It's grueling. I don't care if you watch the Food Channel, and I do, I love it, but it's hard. It's hard work, it's physical, it's making payroll, it's marketing your product, it's being nice to people who are rude to you. All of those things, those are the downsides. The upsides are, we have great customers, we have great staff. We've been busy, yeah. So that's been fun, yeah. So.
Actually, during COVID,
Yeah.
some businesses were
Wholesaling.
people that one couple brought their stuff in. Their
Your bonus check that you got, the $1,200, whatever. We had customers bring us cash. They said, please give this to your employees, because we had to lay off everybody except for 2 people. So what we did, because where we lived, we had to close, so we did that for like 6 weeks. But we did wholesaling of our candy. We could still make candy, so that was great. So we sold a lot of candy at Harvest Market grocery store in Champaign, which is a high-end. Thank God for Harvest Market, and they still are a very good customer. But anyway, so all my employees got the $600 a week, whatever it was, unemployment thing, but they were so bored. So we cleaned. So that everybody took turns, and we cleaned our building top to bottom. We scrubbed, we took booths out, everybody cleaned, so we took turns cleaning. Then we could do takeout food. So we tried takeout breakfast, which was a total disaster. Nobody did that. So we did take out lunch, which was marginally, not great. I say if you lived through COVID and came out on the other side. But restaurants, a lot of restaurants where we were, like Champaign-Urbana, they closed. They never reopened. It was so sad. But where we are, because we're literally 45 minutes from Terre Haute. So what was happening around us? Indiana was open. Wisconsin was open. Iowa was open. Missouri was open. So our Illinois was not open. I'm not debating good or, but so our county is Republican, and our state's attorney came in and she said, I will not close you down if you want to open. Now, in the meantime, the Amish people were always open because they did not participate in COVID. So fine. So anyway, so we opened up and we spread out. We bleached everything. But Champaign-Urbana, Champaign County, was still closed. So we had a lot of Champaign people come just to get out. They just wanted to get out. So we started serving lunch and things outside, which we had never done. We did things we'd never done, but that's okay, we lived through it. I never want to live through that again, ever. It was just the most amazing thing ever. But anyway, but we had restaurants. We have restaurants, we have a couple little clothing stores. There's an art co-op. That we used to have the dollar store across the street, which was handy for us, but they went out on the highway. So our downtown is 4 blocks, so not a lot going on there, but it's filling up, yeah. And people are coming. People now are starting to drive around. Champaign-Urbana downtown is getting better. Your downtown doesn't look too bad. Here, don't go like that, because where we live in Charleston, there are stores now. I think the downtown renaissance is starting to come back. But it takes money, people who, you need money to move into these buildings and fix them and bring them back to code and open up a business, whatever it is. Yeah, so.
The other thing, we're on the map, Steve Harkins show help for that, but
Yeah.
we get tour buses come through now.
Yeah, they're fun. They are fun, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
20 or so.
Yeah, we do that. I keep forgetting. The mail order is seasonal, always was, always will be. The challenge, now it's too hot, so we don't send out candy in the summer. Obviously, it melts. But it's okay. It's not the bulk of our business at all. The bulk of our candy business is wholesaling and just the retail that walk in.
It's hard
Yeah.
because because of
Yeah.
health, you have to charge so much to put dry ice or something.
Yeah.
But we've done it.
We've done it.
Some parents sent some to Afghanistan.
Yeah. It's still melted, but they didn't care. They put it in the freezer. I did bring candy, so you're welcome to sample or
Tell me about your book's famousness.
my books.
Yeah, your visitors telling you about
Oh, this is such a cool story. So last summer, this lady from Eureka, and there was Michael's Sweet Shop in Eureka, came with her aunt, who was a second generation. She wasn't a confectioner, but her dad was, I think. Anyway, they came to the store for lunch, and so I met them, and she said that she had gone to Greece, and she went to the village in the Peloponnese where her grandfather had come from. And so this Greek lady there said, oh, well, why are you here? And she said, well, I wanted to see where my grandfather came from. He had a candy store in the United States, and so the Greek lady said, did you know there's a book? I love that story. It's like, so that's a great story, I know. So anyway, yeah. So we could be here all day, yes. Wait.
As a researcher, is there something in particular you were seriously hoping to find but still eludes you at this point?
Yes, nobody wrote letters, hardly, or took photos. Yeah. I think partly because the literacy rate of the first generation was not great, and and hardly anybody had photos of their businesses. I mean, I could count on two hands the number of pictures we got from people. And then this one, Mrs. Palafos, actually gave me that picture, and she really didn't want to give it to me. And I said, really, I'll get it back to you, you know? And so I did. But my grandfather, nobody took pictures of the store, hardly at all. So I didn't have photos. I didn't have letters. So a lot of the kind of history was all oral history, and nobody wrote anything down hardly. So when I interviewed the second generation Greeks, I had to just double check their stories too. Like the guy, Mr. Adam in Litchfield, he didn't know much about his dad, so I wrote up his story. I went to wherever it was, Litchfield and surrounding town. Anyway, I got the story of his dad, who started out as a confectioner, and they opened up the Ariston restaurant, which is one of the oldest on Route 66. And so anyway, so I took him his dad's story, which he didn't know anything about. And that was another thing nobody talked about, you know. My grandfather just said he was really poor, and you know, they didn't really share that much about coming from Greece. So it was kind of like this lost story. Yeah, lost generation. Yeah, the records suck, frankly. I'll just put it that bluntly. It was really hard to find some things. So, yeah, yeah,
Many of them destroyed the small towns, especially
yeah.
really what the book is about, these small towns, not the big communities,
Yeah.
cities, but the small towns and so forth. So one day I went down to the newspaper office when the paper.
Oh, that's right.
Thank
God.
One book, and we wanted to look and see. They usually didn't put much in the papers except at Christmas.
Oh, yeah, my grandfather would not pay for advertising.
So they put it in the Christmas, but
Yeah.
anyhow, so this was a huge book, it was the size of the pages of the thing. I had to look people up. So I turned to December, and I was looking through all the pages of December, and found a couple of things and took pictures of them. But being a historian myself, I was really careful with this volume. So rather than just flop it closed, I took all the pages and closed from the first page down to this. And on January 1st, there was a story about Anne's grandfather's sister who was visiting Tuscola. And a whole story about the family and her family and why she was coming to the United States because two of her children are now studying in the United States. And it was the whole first column of the whole front page. Had I not turned the pages the way I did, I would have never seen that article. And that was one of the most informative ones and had for a research.
The other challenge with the Greeks, I'll just say, sometimes the family schisms would impact what you found out or didn't find out. So my father's family didn't really talk to each other a whole lot for different reasons, so that impacted my knowledge of things. I never asked my grandfather anything when I was little, and you know, he died when I was in high school, maybe a young adult. So he worked in the store every day till he was 88. For those of you who think about retiring early, yeah. But so there was that. The Greek churches had some records, which were interesting. I mean, I found pieces of stories from different sources. So for instance, I went to Greek Orthodox church directories, and they would buy ads for, you know, this celebration of the 50th year or whatever it was. And my grandfather bought a couple ads. Now these were very interesting because I went through yearbooks, high school yearbooks in these little towns. Now in the 20s and before that, the Greek confectioners would put ads in the yearbook saying clean environment, sanitized surface. The emphasis was cleanliness for two reasons. One is, at the time, tuberculosis was a little rampant in the rural areas. Number two, the Greeks partly were called dirty Greeks, greasy Greeks. You know, they were dirty. You know, they weren't clean. So the Greeks in their public ads would emphasize a clean place, wholesome products for a time, you know, which was very interesting to me because in the church directory it would just be, you know, Flesor's Candy Kitchen or Tuscola Candy Kitchen. And that wasn't necessary among your own. Yeah, so that was very intriguing to me. And even in the newspaper ads, I went through a lot of newspaper ads, and I would pick generally Christmas or Easter, because that's the only time they'd pay to put ads in. My grandfather never. We don't pay for much either. But.
Your books also had ads
Yeah.
in the 20s from the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, they did. Oh, yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Yeah, it was very revealing. So those were my sources on top of newspapers and, you know, Ancestry.com and newspapers, you know, whatever. Just, I had to cobble together, and I did a lot of interviews, primary source interviews of the second generation. So that was fun. I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah, so I learned a lot about that. But mostly the second generation, if they weren't in business, didn't stay in business long because they just didn't want to do it. And their kids didn't want to do it. And that was, yeah, and that was the lament, you know. Nobody wants to do this. And they didn't, you know. GI Bill, free college, whatever, go to school. My grandfather wanted his kids to go to college and not be in the store. Consequently, my brother, he wasn't, but yeah, we ended up in the store. What a story. Okay, are you okay? You're dancing back there. Okay. Okay, did that answer your question? Kind of. Did that?
Has your husband become a full-fledged family member who yells?
No, Roger does not yell, but he has dipped thousands of pounds of candy, so that was really helpful. Yeah.
$17,000 ice cream.
Yeah. It was like a new car.
So we
Yeah.
make all our ice cream by hand,
Yeah.
and then we put all the ingredients in the sheet, and then we make all the candy by hand. And so I made all the caramel, and sister and I did a lot at the beginning. And then I started dipping more as we got busier.
Yeah. No, he does not yell, which is good. That's a good thing. Yeah, my mother always said, never marry a Greek man. It's like,
Well,
yeah.
it's been a good thing for the two sisters. I had nothing to do with the ownership of it. It was the two sisters who owned it, so it was women-owned business.
It still is.
A lot in many ways, but that was part of the Steve Harvey. So it was these two third-generation Greek immigrant daughters who reopened the store. It was an immigrant story.
And it was interesting as women being in business. You know, we went to 2 or 3 banks before we were offered a loan. Yeah, not only because it was a food business, which is risky in and of itself, but I think because we were women. I can't say that for sure, but yeah, it was. And we would get comments. This is my favorite story because we're in a small town, middle of nowhere. Women, when we were aprons. So we would get my sister still gets this. People from Chicago will come in, oh, well, you know, we live in the suburbs. Like we have never been anywhere or gone to college or read a book. I don't know. I mean, very stereotyped we were, still are. And it was so fascinating to me, the comments we would get, and I think too as women, yeah. And, you know, I had run nonprofits and was a management consultant, whatever. I wasn't business stupid, and I would go in with my very detailed business plan, you know, and the whole thing. And it was quite the experience. Yeah, here in the Midwest, I'll just say that.
Does your sister still have the bookshelves?
Yes,
that
yes.
you can take a book?
Yeah, we have a free library. which is huge. My sister, and God love her. Yeah, so bring a book, take a book. Yeah.
We bought the buildings, 2 buildings next
Yeah.
to the original one. Ann's sister planned all of the decorations and how
Yeah, because I said, I did the first, I'm done. I don't care. Yeah, so, yeah, it's fun. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. People, their parents die and they clean the houses out and they come in with boxes of books. Yeah, my sister will go through them because some she does not put out, like she'll say, this is not appropriate. Like, okay, which is fine. I'm not that interested, but yeah. Anyway, so that's the story. It's a great story. It's an immigrant story. It's food history. What I like about it, too, is just that whole Greek diner thing. It was a very unique niche that the Greeks got into in this country. And who knew, right, that here we are making candy. I did bring candy if you want some. You can take it downstairs or hide it in your offices or whatever you want to do. So thank you so much. Thank you. You've been great.
All right, so thank you again. Thank you to those tuning in online. Once again, thank you to our live stream sponsors, WGLT, Bloomington Normals, Public Radio, part of the NPR network. And yeah, we have so many resources available at the McLean County Museum of History if you want to do your own research. Many of the sources that were discussed today are available in our library and archives, so feel free to check us out.
Yeah, they are.
Thanks again.
Yes. Yay.